Hi guys, welcome back again. This is myself and Caroline, and today we're with Nik Jordan. Nik is a physio manual therapist here in Dubai. Myself and Nik, we chat quite a lot about patients and clients back and forth. If my guys have an issue I can't help them with, I send them to you, and we tend to share a lot of notes and good communication channels. You're originally from Switzerland?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, I want to get that correct. How long have you been in Dubai? Do you want to just introduce yourself a little bit, just generally? How long have you been here? Kind of where were you beforehand? What made you kind of go down this professional route?
Yeah, of course. Well, thanks first of all for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
Yeah, I've been a physiotherapist, manual therapist since 2001, approximately, so roughly 17, 18 years. Got into this profession by own experience, really. I had plenty of injuries, and I believe that helped me A, to make the choice of profession, and B, I think it helps me to be better at what I do, because I can empathize with the patients. I know what it means to be injured. I know what it means to have pain. I know what it means to be able to be to be grounded and not be able to do what you love. So that's the reason why I got into it. I came to Dubai 12 years ago, so I had a couple of years practice in Switzerland where I worked numerous things, so mostly in private practice. Worked in healthcare management for a couple of years, building up rehab centers. I taught biomechanics at a college for physiotherapy. I was a graduation examiner, so take graduation exams for people actually and their diploma exams. Came out here of a complete opposite reason of everybody else. I came here because of my wife, because when I met her, she lived here already, and we thought, she's from a different country, from Sweden. Looked into where would we live, right? And Dubai was sounded like a really exciting place. Didn't think that I'm going to be here for 12 years, counting, but here I am. No regrets at all. It's been an amazing journey, and. For me, the interesting thing about Dubai is you have such a multicultural environment. I mean, that's what I love about it, is I have so many different nationalities in the clinic every single day, and the fascination of how different cultures, different people deal with similar injuries or ailments is part of what fascinates me. The person behind it, the psychology behind it as well, which is something we're going to talk about in a minute.
Oh, interesting.
So, apart from being a therapist, I work in a private clinic. I'm into sports still myself, very much. It's a big part of my life and a big part of my passion, and I think I learn every day through my own sports and my own things I do right and do wrong about.
What sports did you play when you were younger?
Well, a bit of everything. I did a bit of athletics and gymnastics as a little kid, which I think is a good basic tool. I played tennis. I did everything. Yeah. But my main sport was handball, which is, I think, not so known on the Isles as such, but Central Europe very big. It's a contact sport, and that's where I got hurt plenty. Netball,
handball with the goal.
Olympic, yeah, exactly.
Tennis ball?
Not the one you throw a tennis ball against the wall.
Oh, okay.
That we don't know, but the handball is it's a team sport, full contact. It's basically like on a smaller thing than a football goal. Yeah. And you tackle each other, and you.
Is that like rugby?
I would say it's probably the Central European rugby. Has a bit similar physicality, I would say.
Is that different to Olympic handball?
No, it's exactly the same.
That's the same one. So the one they play, it's almost like a basketball court, but at the end it's a bluish, like a badminton court rather.
For instance, here it's very popular. It's Germany has a huge league. It's Spain and Central Europe. Interesting is in British territories is completely unknown, so it's not.
I didn't know it was full contact.
Yeah, it is.
And if you just fall on the hardwood floor
sorry, can we backtrack?
I had a broken ribs, broken nose. I have a couple of surgeries on my knees and ankles. And
what is it?
So it's a small indoor sport. It's a small indoor court, isn't it? How big is the court? I'm going to get this wrong. I'll let you explain.
Well, I would say basketball size, a little bit bigger than that. Yeah.
And it's blue?
Not necessarily. It can be parquet.
And it's a round ball?
Yeah.
Do you bounce it?
Yeah, you can bounce it, you can run 3 steps with it, and then you jump up and throw it on a goal. So the goalkeeper is the poor guy who gets it all. And you have a circle where you can't run into, so you pass the ball, look for a gap, and the defense is pretty much
just tackle each other.
It's
got a goal. It's got a small goal with a goalkeeper.
Oh, okay.
Do you ever see the sport where they run and they take a big leap and the guy throws a ball into the net, it's a pretty fast. I didn't know it was full contact there.
Yeah, I mean, full. You know what? He can't just go and get in somebody's legs. Blood tackling is happens, but it shouldn't.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's a physical. You know, basketball you can't touch each other. Whereas
Yeah.
handball, it's part of the game, big part of the game. So bleeding noses, etc., are not rare.
So you get the testosterone out of the Central Europeans that way.
It's a bit like the Aussie rules for Europeans, I would
Yeah.
say. More or less. I don't know. I mean, it's not different game. Anyway, so that's what I did. Ice hockey played. I always liked physical sports, and again I got hurt a few times. Spent a significant amount of times with a physio. Wasn't sure at the time should I go and study medicine, but sports was important, so that kind of was a logical midway really for me. And I still love it.
Yeah.
Then when I came out here to Dubai, I retired from this sport about 2 years before I left because it's just quite physical. Plus I wanted to do something else. I literally trained every day and so every weekend games away. So it was a bit too intense. When I came here, I enjoyed the fact that I could just reorientate. Trouble is, if you have a team, you know that you play rugby, right? So it's when you have a team, you kind of know Tuesday I'm going to do this, Monday, Wednesday, and also you're on your own in a new city, and so I had to think about what I want to do. I'm not a huge runner. I do it, but it's not that it's a passion of mine. So I started a bit of gymming and kind of semi-loved it. Then
you do some calisthenic stuff now?
Now I do, yes. I mean, I kind of stumbled into that sideways because I first, there's a mate of mine, ex-military, who said, let's do a bit of martial arts, which I did a bit in the past, the sparring, and then realized both had kids and kind of got a bit slightly out of shape, so let's get ourselves fit. So we did some beach training, what you call circuits, I would say, started a bit of CrossFit, did the martial arts, and then he had another baby, so kind of that fell apart, and that kind of got stuck a bit in more the CrossFit scene. And realized that my gymnastic game was not the strongest, and then I decided to focus a bit on this, and that's where I more or less got stuck for quite a while because I loved it. So calisthenics, body weight work, I had a goal to do a strict muscle up on the rings, fully strict, and that's just, I don't know why, it just became an obsession. I trained for it, and until I got it. And
amazing, you can do it.
Yeah, I can do it.
It's quite hard.
I'm not really gymnast material, I'm a bit too big and too tall for it, but I thought, and that's part of my passion, is I wanted to prove that, you stick myself, you can't do that because you this shape or you're too heavy. It's just not true. It's a matter of focus, and that's what drives me in my profession as well, I would say. So anyway, and then I kind of, you work for something and you think, good, right, now I got it, what next? So let's just work on the next goal. And what I love about it, and that's what I'm talking about it's a bit more extensively, is because it links really well into my work. I mean, I started to come across some moves on the rings, for instance, where if you don't utilize your body at perfection and all the connective muscle, which is you passionate about as well, if your shoulder is not centered perfectly, stabilized perfectly, everything is tip-top shape, you can simply not do it. And that means everything needs to be perfectly aligned, everything needs to be fully engaged, you need to have that feeling for your body. And I learned a lot through this for my work. And I started to implement that with my patients. Now, most of them, they don't monkey around on rings, but the thing is, if the shoulder is a shoulder, it works in a certain way. And for me, gymnastics, I was never passionate about this, but calisthenics became a passion of mine. Not that I'm fantastic at it, but I love it. It just links really well into biomechanics. Because perfect biomechanics lead you to achieving this goal, and if you don't have that, it's just you'll always struggle. And so, experimenting with these little details is what I started to do with my patients. I realized certain elements I trained for to achieve my goals are exactly the elements they need to become pain-free or be able to, whether that's a pull-up or whether that's lifting a cup of coffee off the shelf or hanging the laundry is sounds weird, but it's fundamentally not that different because it's mechanics. It's lifting the arm, it's loading the arm or legs for that matter, whatever body part it is.
And you were a biomechanics lecturer.
Yes.
How did that go? How did you fall into that, or was
biomechanics
a speciality of yours?
Passion, I would say.
Yeah.
Fall into that is probably a pretty good expression because I literally fell into it. I always had this was another kind of idea I had what I could do, because the body always fascinated me, movement always fascinated me, the human biology, always anatomy, and always studied it. And very early in my education, I realized, you get a pretty broad education, but you realize straight, well, I want to go there, or this interests me, and that I have to cover, but I'm less passionate about it. And manual therapy goes pretty much hand in hand with biomechanics, and I studied that deeper. And then I was asked to, actually the same college I graduated from, which was a bit weird at the beginning, also on the other side of the fence, but started teaching this, and in the beginning everybody asked, like, can you do it? So, well, have you done it before? Then no, but I can learn it. And that's the thing, you hit the ground running and somehow do it, and do it. I think as long as you do something to the best of your abilities, it turns out okay. And I did this for a bit, and students that turned out good. So
yeah. So what's the difference? What's the key focus on a biomechanics, say, module or lecture? Like, what would you be teaching your students, just so people have an idea of what is biomechanics? Biomechanics is a big word, right? I mean, in the brief or the curriculum I got was just basically understand how a joint works, right? I mean, a lot of people think a joint is just a hinge like a door, which it isn't. It's a pretty complex thing. And a lot of people come into clinic and say, oh, knee is a really complicated joint. It is and it isn't. But if you look at a joint, but let's say it's just to get a knee from bending to extending, is not just to break it down very simply, for instance, you have a rolling movement, and then you have a gliding movement, because otherwise that bone just rolls off this. So that's the simplest concept of biomechanics, is that to accommodate the movement, so it's not just a hinge movement, it also has to glide. And so you have then in one plane, but then you also have rotation components, and then you have lateral components, and then you have, so that's a joint or orthomechanics. And then you have also then the ligaments and the muscles, how they influence that. So it becomes very complex. So if you look at a diagram of how a joint moves, that looks pretty overwhelming. And for students to break that down to simple things. And I think for me the key was to get these complex things down to what's actually useful. What can you transfer in your daily practice? So for instance, if you have a rehab client with an often ACL, a cruciate ligament repair, and can't bend fully, what is it? Is it muscle? That's the basic things. But for instance, when you realize, okay, it's not muscle, it's well stretched, mobility is good, tissue mobility is good, still doesn't work, or is it the knee blocks? So that could be, for instance, that the glide is not right, or the lateral glide isn't right, or the rotations are not free, which is something we don't necessarily associate with bending as such, but is relevant. So if you come as a student into this profession, you don't know all these things. A lot of these things you read, you learn, or you gain experience in, and a lot of therapists out there do things right because they're just out of experience, but they don't really know why. And to give somebody these tools, already know that, look, when bending is stuck, go and look for that internal rotation of the knee, or go and look for that anterior posterior glide, and so there's certain rules and patterns underlying, and if you know them, then that's helpful. Biomechanics is just one of them, but I think our profession is, for me, I always try to break things down into principles, and I think if you understand certain principles, you can rehab an elbow even if you never had touched an elbow. It's the mechanics, the anatomy, and principles of wound healing. Yeah. Did you go into any of the mathematics behind it, or was it? Not too much, because this is then more the scientists, right? And honestly, I do know the surface of that. I would have to brush up on that as well. But again, I don't know how it is in your professions. It's like what you use daily is something. The applicable knowledge is what you keep, what you retain. Yeah. For instance, I'm not shy of bringing out a book in front of a patient. So listen, I don't know. Let's look it up. Or just, you think, Lance, do you mind if I just bring out the anatomy quickly? Because the stuff you use regularly, and the stuff you don't use regularly, you forget. But, we're not supercomputers. It's the stuff sometimes you look it up. And I think it's nice to. So numbers is, for my profession, only partially relevant. Yeah. In training, physiology, yes, to some extent, but whether of that force of vector this way and anterior and posterior, that's not super relevant, because ultimately everybody's a bit different.
I have a question for you. So I've noticed you've got a little bit of a piece of paper there, and before the podcast we were talking about some of your passions, and what you wanted to discuss today were your passions. So do you mind if we go into that one?
Don't mind at all.
Amazing.
I like to talk about my passions. I have a lot of them though, but
I'm really curious.
Yeah, I mean, when Keith contacted me, he said, "But so what do you want me to talk about?" So, well, talk about something you like and something what do you want. And so it's really hard to break that down. But I think I try to talk about a bit what I feel I do possibly different, or what I put an emphasis on, because physiotherapy is you talk to ask different people about what that is they will have completely different associations. I mean, I can tell you something I'm not passionate about is all this, a lot, and that's what a lot of people understand under physio. I'm sorry I'm a bit direct here, but there's a lot of people who went through numerous sessions with electrodes on their knees and ultrasound, and then they gave a heat pack and they handed out a sheet of exercise. And for me, sorry to say, might offend a few people, but this for me is not physiotherapy, because it's not specific. What I'm really passionate about is there's an individual coming in with an injury. 5 people come in with I don't know, a low back pain. You have 5 different reasons. You can have 100 people with 100 different reasons. And important is that we're expected, and this is our how do you say? We have to be specific. We have to take everybody individual, and they come in with not just with an injury. They come in with fears. They come in with beliefs. They come in with baggage of how many people they've seen, how many doctors have assessed them, what a pile of scans they have or not, and also with a different background in movement. Some people are really experienced with movement, and others are not. Some people had injuries, others are not. So the experience is important. And so I think that that's one thing I want to talk about is that side of the person. So a lot of people come in with fears, and in my belief is that a lot of the injuries we treat or pains we treat are often because of fear of movement, because not knowing, am I okay to do this? How much danger am I under? Right? Let's say, simple example, you bend down, pick up a pen, and back goes into spasm. Right? 10 out of 10 pain, you almost faint. Very dangerous, right? Your brain goes off and says, "Ooh, careful! This is disaster." And if you never had an injury, it's insidiously painful. Like, I had it myself a long time ago, and I remember that. It's shocking. But if somebody who had it a few times, they will have a bit less of a problem. Now, if you go down the route of like hospital, for instance, there's MRI straight away, right? And then look at this, and you get into Hell's Kitchen with this. That's the problem. And so I think how you explain, if a client comes in, how do you explain what they have to them is very important. The words you use is very important, terminology. Some people come in and say, when you ask them what's your problem, are you here? They say, I have a L5, S1 central disc protrusion encroaching on my whatever nerve root. And I just sit there and think, like, you shouldn't even know these words. I got
a long message on Instagram from a gentleman, maybe 10 or 12 sentences of spiral line problems, risky shoulder blade, like just some was technical, some was just, I don't know who's told this guy, who has spoken to this guy before, because he's coming in with a full list of things, and like you just said, you shouldn't know any of these terms.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you should just come in and say, I have a back pain, I bent down, and I got a really bad back, and I'm trying to get back, right? This is what would be a bit more a healthy.
I want to get better, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not the patient's fault. It's often the people they've seen, right? And so, I have a lot of practitioner doctors, they have these beautiful models of spines with this big red blob popping out of it. It's just not a good sign. When you come in and it's like, oh my God, that's me. Yeah, we call it a nocebo, not a placebo, it's a nocebo. Straight away that sends it like, oh yeah, that's
pain
me.
Reception.
Terrible. Or you see some models where the disc sits next to the spine, that's even worse, right? I mean, as a layman, you just don't know what to do with that. And that's the problem.
Yeah,
so
I know those things can be really scary. Like, it's incredible how impactful images can be, particularly negative images. They can stay with you so much longer than the positive stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's the verbal, the non-verbal. It's these images, it's these models, and all this. And I think important in our profession is to kind of reorganize people's thoughts. A doctor might say, "Oh, you have a back of an 80-year-old." And you're 23 or 30.
Why would you say that to
Number
someone?
one, not helpful, all right? Number two, certainly not true, yeah? And number 3, they say that it casually in 10 seconds. It takes me about 3 months to get out their heads again. That's the problem.
Yeah, I know.
And
do you know, sorry to interrupt you
it's
there.
all right.
A long time ago, I decided it would be a good idea to look at one of my surgeries on YouTube. So I typed what it is, I looked it up, I watched it. My foot immediately started hurting, like aching.
Crazy, right?
I was like, close the laptop. I could never get those images out of my mind. Like, they're still there. So it's crazy.
That's the problem. We call it a neurotag, right? I mean, this foot is obviously tagged in your brain. I mean, this is like a red towel. But for us then in treatment is to try to slowly get these tags away, to realize, hey, you can actually heal, your body can do this.
Yeah. So one thing takes you like a year to help people get out of.
It can. And that's actually, it can be 5 seconds or a wrong word which creates chronic pain.
Yeah.
You know, people, and that's another speciality of mine is chronic pain. And people always think chronic pain is something which lasted longer than 3 months. When I was educated, they said everything longer than 3 months is chronic. It's rubbish. There's people who are after 10 seconds chronic already, and others who are 7 years and they're not chronic.
Nick, I have a question for you then. So you said that these are things that are really challenging for you to help people get out of. So what would be the advice that you would use, or some of the tactics that you use yourself in order to help people understand what their pain is without actually getting them into that whole scare thing and into fear? What do you do?
I think, I mean, for me, the foundation of our profession, and not just therapists. I mean, I believe in teamwork. I believe you're as much as a therapist as anybody else, and myself and doctors. We're a team, you know. Everybody who is interested in health is a team. We work as a team, and so I think everybody should look into this. The key thing is information for me. It's kind of, first of all, I ask the patient's belief system. So, for instance, if somebody has a back pain for 3 months. 3 months seems a long time, right? For patients, for us, it's long, but it's not a drama. Well, it's not good, but it doesn't mean anything about you can still change that. But I ask people often, said, okay, you're not a doctor. I know you're not a doctor, but what do you think is your problem? What do you think is causing your problem? And then I bring up, and you can tell quite easily how the belief system works. And the belief system is a really, really important thing in that. You know, if I give you a simple example, when I worked in chronic pain in Switzerland, I had this guy who was from the Balkans, and his language skills were not perfect. So you have to be even more careful, right, with how you say things. And I asked him in a session. There was an intern rehabilitation also, and I asked him, I said, "Can you come on, let's just bend forward?" And he kind of broke out in sweat, and you can see the fear of God in his eyes, and I said to him, "What is it?" He said, "Well, no, I can't do that." And so I scaled back. I said, "Okay, can we do it seated, etc.?" And just he wouldn't, right? And so at one point, it took me a couple of days. I realized he told me that, and I said to him, "Why are you so scared? Because nothing can happen, I promise you." And he said, "Well, it's because of the rust." So what do you mean by rust? The rust in my back. I said, "I don't understand." He said, "Well, my doctor said my back is rusty." I said, "Yeah, but it's not, it's not corroded. There's a saying, it's a figure of speech, it says a bit rusty means you're a little bit tight." But his belief system was, we found out later, that number one, he thought he has one gigantic disc in his back and not 24 of them. And that one thing, big thing, was exploded, right? Because that's how somebody told him, because his language was not great, and said, "And your back is rusty, so it can corrode it." So he didn't bend. So can you imagine with this disastrous thoughts in your head? Of course, I would be scared as well to bend my back. But once we kind of explained that, the guy bent beautifully, and it's just because of his fear of movement or fear of injury, right? And so, back to your question, so I'm derailed a little bit here, but what I usually do is I check for their belief system. I try to clean up this belief system. That sometimes with a few sentences, explanations. I have friends like over there, I have a whiteboard in my room, which is one of my main tools. You draw stuff, or you have them draw stuff. It's like, draw me a disc, how does it look like? And then you understand what they think.
Their perception, of course.
I take their scan and say, look, I always tell them, look, you're not a scan. It's the most important thing. And I bring out statistics, and we know that about, don't pin me down the numbers, of roughly 65% of people above the age of 30 do have change in their disc to full prolapses, but no pain. They're completely asymptomatic. I bring this up, bring science up. If they want it in writing, I give it to them in writing, not a problem. But to explain that, and I say, okay, well, look at your data scan, and I explain it to you exactly what I see. I'm not a radiologist, but I'm good enough to be able to tell you what's good, what's less good. But keep in mind that this is not the only truth. I'm much more interested in what we do after. I want to see you move. Yeah? But you look at it, you explain it, and so many times you see that aha moment, that light bulb effect, and they're like, literally, you can see their body language relax.
I mean,
and for me, I know my job is done right, or I've done good that day when I literally see their body language, their whole being change. And often people tell me, I feel so much better just because of what you told me. And you know, I use the term positive reinforcement. I mean, you need to. People always look at what's wrong. They never tell you what's right, right? And there's a lot of things right. And I think patients who have been in insidious pain or have been to excessive diagnostics and hospital stays and doctors who told them all sorts of things, or if you fall down you end up in a wheelchair. I mean, sorry, this is just for me, that's for me almost malpractice to say something like that. And unless it's true, which in this case, in this connection, I never heard, read or seen any case like that, honestly. But important is that you're honest with people, and you're honest about what you think, you don't sweet talk stuff, you know, but it depends how you convey a message. If somebody has I don't want to talk about discs all the time. In this case, if somebody has a problem, you usually tell them, listen, there's not no problem. You got something there, but it's not the full truth. And then I bring back science and saying there's a lot of people with this who are fine. They're pain-free. I'm one of them, by the way. I had that myself with everything. I told you I had a bit of baggage myself, but I had numbness, pins and needles, even a 50% drop foot, and I haven't even done a scan because I know what my scan shows.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is just going to make me worse, because every time I have a back pain, I think, oh, my disc. But it's just, right now, it's just a back pain. It's a funny thing. I rehabbed it, never seen a therapist for it. I bring that up with patients, tell them, look, I haven't done a scan, but I don't need to, but I'm fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was in my early 20s playing rugby, I used to get some back pain, and it was in my studies. So it was when I was around lecturers who were physios and anatomy teachers and pathologists. I remember asking one or two people, and two of them gave me different things. So I sort of was like, okay, well, I don't really know what it is. One person said it could be a disc because when I'd sneeze, I'd get a pain. Or the other guy just kind of said, you know, just keep going. Maybe just stop doing A, B, and C and see what happens. I never got it treated. I never got it looked at. And then the more placements I went on, the more I understood what was going on with my own back. It was if I opened my hips, if I did this, A, B, and C, things will get better. Did all that, rehabbed it, fine. And now, like you said, bending over in my room, I might get a back spasm once every year and a half, and it could put me in bed for the day, but it doesn't make me freak out. But what I would like to have done is to have got a scan then, and then compare now to see if there's any change. But I'm also glad I didn't get a scan because I didn't get bogged down in the minutia of the millimeters of the disc or whatever. And now there's certain stuff I don't do because I am a little bit apprehensive of it coming back. But I can run marathon, I can do gym stuff, I can do a lot of other stuff. There's just one or two things. I'll just avoid those. And I think that's from my own education, my own understanding of my back.
Sorry, I was going to interject there just before you finished. Nik, what I think is really valuable about what you just said just then was that you didn't you basically treated yourself, you didn't have any scans, and I think the important lesson there is that you have this huge amount of education that you can base that on. And I think that's the important thing, is that if people self-educate, then you know what I'm trying to say here, I just lost my words.
No, but that's exactly my point. And you know, I try to educate people. That's my goal is not the people to leave the room just pain-free. People always ask what, right? L5, S1, rotated cuff, whatever body part we're talking about. Nobody ever asks the question why, right? Or very few people. Of course, there's people do. And now I always tell patients that I can get you better, but you know, I want to know why did this happen? Why does this area look more worn than this area? That means this has been overworked, something has been underworked. So my focus, I can't fix a torn rotated cuff. I can't fix a disc either. What I can do is I can take stress away from that so it doesn't keep happening, so you don't get into back spasm every 3 months. You don't have a tendinitis every time you had a hard physio session on your or hard gym session on your shoulder. And so so I want people leave, or let's say when we dismiss, we close a case, then that people leave with their goals achieved, whatever that, and we talk about pain all the time. It's not always pain. Number two, I want them to know why I got this in the first place, and I want them to know what can I do for this not to happen again. And if it, God forbid, does happen again, because all of us, which is human, right? It stops hurting, we stop being disciplined about it.
Yeah.
Knowing, right, I had this before, last time I did this and this and this, Nick showed me, or whoever else showed me, I got better. So if people then remember that and say, oh yeah, I've tried your stuff and actually made it better, it's just that part I can't get it right. That's my passion. This is where I just want, ideally, that the patient never sees me again for the same problem. But sometimes they do, because you went to base 1, base 2, but sometimes you have to go to the 3rd layer or the 4th layer. You feel like you've done a holistic job, but there's still, it comes back, and then you need to look at lifestyle, let's say. But that you kind of get a step further in your journey every single time, and hopefully that you get it right the first time.
Yeah,
right?
I think because I train a lot of the guys who go to see you every now and again, and I know that from their lifestyle, from their stress, from their jobs, the stuff that we can't control, we can't prevent. So a lot of the times they come back from you feeling completely rejuvenated and, you know, completely ready to go again. I wanted to ask you, you talked to me about some of the work you're trying to, you want people to begin to kind of understand their own pain first, understand their own education first.
Yes.
Yeah, so just explain that. You want because I know we kind of touched on this over the phone. You're creating, like, your plan is to build a social media videos to then be able to send to your patients and say, perhaps this is helpful or perhaps that's helpful.
Yeah, again, I mean, for me, getting people better is one part of my job, but keeping them better is the real passion. And social media, I mean, I'm a bit to today's stand, a bit old-fashioned when it comes to it. I had to learn. I'm still learning this whole social media game.
We're all still learning. It keeps changing.
I don't particularly like it. Yeah, I mean, not dislike it. It's just the problem is it's a bit of a bragging platform, right? And I don't want to do this. I want to really have a value. So a lot of people always ask me, why didn't you develop this? I said, because I need a plan. I want to know. There has to be a goal, right? Not just like, look at me, how good I am. This is because there's plenty of good people out there, but it has to be a value for the consumer. And so I think it's important, like in a choice of profession, you know, where you want to go with this. And so I'm in the process of doing this. But to give you a bit of a snippet, and one of the ideas is to, you know, make people less lost with injuries. And we talked about extreme cases of chronic pain or severe pain, but let's talk about this in an athletic setup. For instance, in your gym, right? A guy does a shoulder press and says, every time after my shoulder press I get this pain, or sometimes I get a shooting pain, and then for 3 days I can't train, can't lift my arm, and then what I do, same thing again, go to a doctor, have an MRI scan, they say, oh, you have got a rotator cuff this and impingement this. You know, impingement, for instance, is not which is, you know, for people who don't know that, is when a tendon gets impinged between the shoulder and the scapula, and it can inflame, so it can be painful to lift the arm. Impingement is not a diagnosis, for instance, right? Impingement is a symptom complex, but there's about 10 or more reasons why you can have an impingement. Again, people always focus as a radiologist says there's an impingement of the shoulder. You can't tell that from an MRI, I'm sorry. This is a clinical diagnosis, but what's causing it? That's what we treat. We don't treat impingement, we treat the dyskinesis, or the wrong positioning of the shoulder blade. We treat the thoracic kyphosis, etc. That's what you treat, and that's the real finding. Yeah. Going off topic again, the thing is, it's just the patient or the client or your clients that just to say, my shoulder hurts every time I do that dip, right? And so then they said, shall I do it, shall not? They said, what my scan shows, my labral tear, or all these expressions the client shouldn't even know. Sometimes there's very simple things you can do. So what I would try and educate clients on is, okay, you have that pain, how do you respond to this? You're in the gym, fully motivated, 10 minutes into it, and bam, there you go, my shoulder goes again, right? Then what do? Do I go home crying? Do I run to a doctor? Do I eat ibuprofen or whatnot? It's like, how can I assess, how dangerous is this, what I have right now? Do I have to stop or not, right? Is there damage, or is it just a dysfunction? So, for instance, hey, can I fix that somehow? Can I release a trigger point at the back of my shoulder? So you do that. I tell them, okay, take out a lacrosse ball or a trigger point ball, release that point, try again. It's like, oh, that feels much better now. That means you can continue. Right? Patients need to know, do I need to stop or can I push through? Right? So first is always So educating them, right, I got this pain again, what can I do about it? I want them to remember what helped last time. So I call that troubleshooting. So that could be with a foam roller, a stretch, a traction stretch, a trigger point. So you do this, right? And then when that gets better, you have the reassurance that cannot be damaged, right? I mean, it might be somewhat an asymptomatic, but that's not relevant for my problem. So already red flags come down, patient is happy, I can continue, I don't have to go home after 10 minutes, great.
Yeah.
Right? If you realize, and that's what I tell, I'm not just treating, I tell them, okay, these are the stages how you assess an injury. Okay, you fix that. Let's say you do this, troubleshooting, doesn't feel better. What do you do? So you're going to try to check, okay, is my form wrong? Corrective form, still hurts. All right, the form is wrong. Scale the exercise, make it easier, change position slightly, and if you feel like that feels much better, then you do this, and then you bring the back. So basically analyze what is the problem. Is it something because I slept funny, I was stressed today, and that's why my shoulder stands in a funny way, or is it really, again, these red flags from before in my brain, is it really my tear? And again, this education is important for the patient to know basically, I have a pain, an 8 out of 10, and how much danger am I under? Can I harm myself or not? That's what the patients want to know. And so my assessment is usually very simple. I mean, when somebody comes into me, and I check, is there damage? Is it a hardware problem or a software problem, I should say? Is there damage, a tear, a fracture? No, move it, right? If there's something on this, go and do diagnostics, do due diligence, and do what you have to do. But if it's not, if I can clearly say, no, it's not broken, then movement is the key, right? Go back to the back. Moving a painful back, if there's no structural problem, which most of the times isn't, will actually help. Not moving will make it worse.
Yeah, of course.
But there's a right timing. There's the other part is then, is it inflammatory or is it mechanical, right? If there's a huge cloud of inflammation over the whole thing, well, good luck moving it. It won't work. So you might have to do this. Again, you go back to biology. 2-3 days of inflammation period, 3 to 5 days maybe. So whatever you do, you acid rested, arnica, medication, whatever rocks you want, you do that to get this down, and then move it. Right? And so in the process, you might realize, okay, there was a bit of an issue, so we still do diagnostics or not, but as long as you get better, and you just need to listen to your body, what signals your body gives you. I just help to interpret them.
Yeah, I was going to ask you something you said earlier really caught my attention. You mentioned that your real passion is helping people stay healthy. So tell me, how do you do that? And then what advice do you have for your patients as to what they can do to stay healthy? What would your recommendations be?
That's a good question. I mean, essentially, I cover one aspect of their problems or their whatever they're suffering from, and I think to stay healthy, it's you need to grasp the whole situation of the patient. There's a big thing, that social cycle.
I know.
Psychosocial model and all this. I mean, you need to grasp the patient as a whole. I mean, we in physiotherapy or in medicine generally there's this thing called clinical reasoning. That means you reason what's the problem. Why did it happen? What's the reason for it? But also a very important thing is this. So this is a part which is called maintaining factors. What maintains the problem? That could be let's talk about the shoulder again. Kyphosis in your thoracics, a mechanical maintaining factor, but it can also be because your computer mouse is too far forward, you're overreaching, or because your car seat is wrong, or if you spend like this 5 minutes, it's not a problem. If you do that 8 to 10 hours a day, it can become a problem. That means I can treat, I can strengthen and all this, but then if you go and spend 10 hours there, I mean, how do you feed that, right? Or if somebody says, I can straighten up nicely, but then I spend 10 hours in that position, it's a problem. So you need to first of all analyze this. Second thing is, again, I talked about passive modalities, and that's a big problem in our job. I'm a manual therapist. I apply passive methods, but I know today that this doesn't fix people. It makes them feel better. It gives them a boost. But to maintain that is like learning a language. You can go to a language teacher or a piano lesson. If you don't practice, you won't get better. Simple as that. There's a few things which are very acute. Somebody locks their neck. You can manipulate that neck, they feel better. You will never see them again. Happens. But most of the patients, that's not the case. So you need to give them tools how they can maintain this. In my case, I try to see what muscles don't work well. So for instance, I don't just focus on where the pain is, I focus on what's maintaining it mechanically, and to give them exercise tools to do. But the problem is everybody who has been in a treatment with a therapist will know that these exercises are terribly boring, right? I mean, I say that a bit sarcastically. I've been there, and I've not been the best patient, honestly speaking. But I try to keep it low. That means keep the amount low. If you give somebody a sheet of 5 sheets of exercise, 20 exercises, nobody does that.
Yeah.
Very, very few. I mean, we love these patients to do it, but they don't. And I don't want patients to do this. It has to be transferable into your daily life. So if it's one of your clients, Keith, then that's how we work together. That's what we love, working together, is to say, I don't tell Keith what to do. He knows that 10 times better than me. But I say, I think this is the problem, and I think that's what's creating it. So if you can just keep an eye on that his retraction is good, or that this part but how he achieves that, with what exercise, that's his expertise, right? It's not mine. I give them the tools, but ideally linked to their daily activities. So somebody is a CrossFitter, right? Then you say, okay, if you're up in that pull-up, like how do you properly engage? I give them the basic tools. I always teach them the patterns, kind of, what important patterns when you push, what when you pull, and they're always more or less the same. If you understand these patterns, bring it back to the beginning of our conversation. If you understand the basic principles, you can apply that to anything. And I think to make something overwhelming seem easy is important, right? Meaning, if you know this pattern, if I apply that to any pulling action, or this one to any pushing action, you basically just have to learn 2 things and apply it to different things. And that's what I try to do in my part of it. Of course, there's nutrition comes in, there's sleep management comes in, etc. And I know a little bit about it, but I'm not a nutritionist, and I will never claim that I am one. I do think we need to all learn more about these things, because I think these professions are, what you guys doing is testament on that. They're emerging more and more, and I think it has to. Yeah, you need to know about nutrition. You're as much a therapist as you're a rehab trainer or a personal trainer. Yeah, I'm becoming more and more a little bit of a trainer. Doesn't mean make me a trainer, and I'll never claim to be one. But you need to know about each other's fields and kind of these grey zones to cover those. Yeah, but it can go further as well. I mean, how to change lifestyle. Give them advice about how do I relax, when I get nervous or I can't sleep at 4 a.m. and
even things like breathing, like
not even
breathing.
Very important,
it's
right?
the most important.
Yeah. Meditation. I discovered meditation recently for myself, and it's amazing. Yeah. Before I thought medication I'd like to learn, but I can't do it. Well, I wasn't born being able to ride a bike either. You can learn, it's a skill, right? Like everything else. So. Yeah, I mean, I think, as I said, it's you need to look at it broad. You can't just focus on, here it hurts, and so let's rub there and hope it gets better. That's too simple. I'm not sure if that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. It does. So just out of curiosity, I think I asked you this before. What did you do personally? Like, what are your lifestyle things that you do to stay healthy? Because obviously you've had lots of injuries. You're also a physiotherapist, so you can meet both in the middle. Tell us your secrets.
Secrets. Well, it's not a secret, really. I mean, first of all, I'm not a saint. I mean, we're always better. All of us, we're always better to give other people advice than to do it ourselves. But people often ask me that, what do you think is important for a healthy life? I mean, food choices are important. I'm not talking about having a slim waistline. I'm just talking about produce quality. Because I believe a lot of the industry-produced food and these E-factors and whatnot, I don't think they're good for us. And I think it's by now, I don't want to put any statements out there, but I make sure that I try to control what I can control with my nutrition. Doesn't mean I won't have a pizza, I will have it, but I won't have it 5 days a week.
Yeah,
right?
of course.
So nutrition is important, sleep is important, so enough sleep, quality sleep, activity. I deliberately say activity and not training because, some people train, some people walk, some people swim, some people just, try to take the stairs. But try to, especially in a town like this, make sure you get active wherever you can, regularly. That's important. And there's a little bit of luck involved as well, I think. But over the years, I added another component which I think is super important, and which is happiness. And I mean, that's something you can't just create like that. But I believe if you sleep well, eat well, you have healthy relationships, friendships, make good choices, happiness often, hopefully, comes as part of it. And if you're not, then you need to figure out why you're not happy. And I think that's one of the most overlooked. To be a bit more specific. I mean, I try to train whenever I can. I have family. For many people, they say, oh, you know, I have a job. I mean, I work from 7:30 till 5, 6 o'clock sometimes, and then because I already get up at 6, I just I go training after work, and often I go out of the clinic and I feel like, oh, shattered, I should rather go home. But if I actually go and force myself, most of the times I look forward to it, but there are these moments where like, oh, shall I make a U-turn or shall I go? And when you go, you come home energized.
Yeah,
if
you
I
feel
don't
better.
Go, I fall asleep on the sofa and I'm useless at home. But I'm a better father, I'm a better husband, better everything for myself. I sleep better if I actually do it then. So I'm trying to make that regular. My wife will tell you that I'm actually quite grumpy if I don't exercise. Sometimes she sends me, she forces me. But I used to train like 5-6 times a week. These days, as you get a bit older, you realize your body needs different things. So right now I get away with 3 times, 4 times a week. Relaxation, rest. I like active relaxation. I go out for a stand-up paddle. I go for a run on the beach or a swim, simple like that, or just a walk with a dog or play with my daughter. Yeah, that's fulfills me. That makes me happy. That's my happy place, family. Foods. We eat very healthy. Yeah, I don't cut anything particular out except if it's not good for me. But again, that doesn't mean I don't, commit some sins here and there. It's not So that's personally what I try to do, and I try to live by example. Right? Do you practice what you preach? Yeah,
that's important. Very important.
So Nik, where can people get in touch with your social media if they want to follow you and keep up to date?
On social media, it's again, I started my Instagram recently. It's a little bit basic for the time being, but watch this space. It's probably the best thing is nikjordan.physio. That's my name on Instagram. I know it's very original, but so that's where they can find me. I have a Facebook page, but that's a little bit deserted at the moment. But I think Instagram is the best place. Or that's
cool. Perfect.
And Nik, thank you so much. We really appreciate it for imparting all your knowledge. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for having me.